The rain poured over the glittering city skyline, each drop hitting the glass walls of the towering skyscraper like a ticking clock counting down to a moment no one could predict. Inside, the CEO of one of the country's most powerful corporations stood in her corner office, staring at a dossier that had consumed the last 5 years of her life. It was more than an investigation, more than a search. It was an obsession, an unshakable need to find a man she barely knew but could never forget. She had spent over 100 million in private investigators, data analysts, and even international searches. Yet, the truth was more ironic and heart-wrenching than anything she had imagined. The man she sought was right under her nose all along, pushing a mop across her marble floors every single night. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that people's true worth is often hidden beneath the surface, please take a moment right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Stories like this are why we exist, to remind the world that every person has a story worth knowing. Her name was Victoria Lane, sharp, featured, impeccably dressed, and feared in the boardroom for her relentless precision. She had built her empire from the ground up, but success had come at a cost. Somewhere in her past, in the blur of corporate deals and relentless ambition, she had crossed paths with a man who had saved her in ways she couldn't even fully recall. It was a single night, years ago, when her life had been on the verge of collapse. A night filled with a stranger's kindness, a warm coat draped over her shoulders in the rain, and a whispered promise that she was stronger than her pain. She had never even learned his name. But that moment had stayed with her, haunting her, driving her to find him. The man she searched for was Daniel Cole, a single father in his early 30s with eyes that seemed to carry both the weight of the world and the gentleness of someone who had endured it with quiet strength. Life had been cruel to Daniel. He had once been on a promising career path, but tragedy struck when his wife died unexpectedly during childbirth. Overnight, his dreams dissolved into a single mission, raising his newborn daughter Emily. Corporate ambitions no longer mattered. All that mattered was keeping Emily safe, fed, and loved. With no family to turn to, he took the only job that would let him be there during the day. A night shift as a cleaner in an office building. It paid little, but it was steady, and it allowed him to walk Emily to school every morning. Victoria never noticed him. Why would she? To her, he was just part of the background, a figure mopping the floors when she worked late into the night. She would pass him without a word, barely glancing up from her phone, unaware that he was the very man she was pouring her fortune into finding. Daniel never said a word either. He remembered her. The night he had given her his coat, she had been trembling and lost, yet there was a strength in her eyes he admired. But what could a janitor possibly say to a CEO who looked like she had everything? Life went on this way for months, until fate forced their worlds to collide. One late evening, as Victoria was leaving after a tense meeting, she caught sight of Daniel sitting in the empty lobby. His head was bent low, hands covering his face. Emily's small backpack lay beside him. Something about the scene stopped Victoria in her tracks. She approached, not as a CEO, but as a human being, and quietly asked if he was all right. Daniel hesitated, but exhaustion and worry broke through his guarded nature. Emily was sick, he explained, and he couldn't afford the treatment she needed. He had been trying to pick up extra shifts, but it still wasn't enough. That night, something shifted inside Victoria. The next day, she had her assistant discreetly run his background, and when the report landed on her desk, her hands froze. There it was, the record of a small town address, the death of his wife, the story of a man who had given up everything for his daughter. And there, in a buried note from a private investigator years ago, was a faint description that matched the man she had been searching for all along. She had found him. Not in a foreign country, not in some distant city, but in her own building, quietly working, never asking for recognition. From that moment, Victoria's mission changed. She didn't reveal right away that she had spent 100 million trying to find him. Instead, she began to help in quiet ways, covering Emily's medical bills anonymously, offering Daniel a daytime position that paid triple his cleaning salary, and creating a flexible schedule so he could be with his daughter. Daniel was stunned, unsure why the CEO was suddenly so invested in his life, but he accepted, knowing it was the only way to secure Emily's future. Months later, during the company's annual gala, Victoria finally told him the truth. She stood before him in the same kind of raincoat he had given her years ago and confessed that he had once saved her when she had nothing. No hope, no direction, and that she had spent years trying to find him to repay that debt. Daniel was silent for a long time, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and disbelief. And then, with a quiet smile, he said something that would stay with her forever. "You didn't have to find me to repay me. You just had to live the life I knew you could." By the time the story reached its quiet, beautiful end, Daniel had built a stable, happy life for Emily. Victoria had learned that the people who change us most often come in the most unexpected forms. And both of them understood that sometimes, the greatest acts of kindness are the ones done without expecting anything in return. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. We share these moments to remind the world that empathy can change lives in ways money never could. Special request: comment below with one act of kindness someone has shown you that you've never forgotten. Your story might inspire someone else today.